the term slavery conjures up images of slave ships crossing the Atlantic between Africa and the Americas. But what went on in the Magdalene Laundries here in this state was a very Irish form of slavery. And we know that it continued from the foundation of this state until 1996. An estimated 30,000 women were detained in these laundries, run by Catholic religious orders. And the state failed these women comprehensively. Religious orders used these girls and women as unpaid labour. Women incarcerated in these institutions worked for no pay, whilst the orders ran the laundries on a commercial basis in brutally harsh conditions. And those who tried to escape and were apprehended by the Gardaí were returned to the institutions. Disgracefully, the Magdalene women were excluded by the state from the 2002 Residential Institutions Redress Scheme. And then in May 2011, government represented by the then Secretary-General of the Department of Justice and Equality, Sean Aylward, appeared before the UN Committee Against Torture. And at that time, the state claimed that the laundries were private institutions, that they were voluntarily occupied and outside the scope of state responsibility, bar one exception. And they persisted in this lie, the lie that nothing was known about the enslavement and brutality experienced by women in these institutions. I very much welcome at last today's publication of the Inter-Departmental Committee report on the Magdalene institutions. That report, I believe, underlines the fact that there was substantial state involvement in these laundries and substantial state negligence in their duty of care to these women. So the women are vindicated. They, after all, told the truth. And the truth is that the state failed them. Can I ask you, Taoiseach, when you propose to offer on all of our behalves, on behalf of the state, a full apology to these women?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
First of all, Cancora, I want to thank Senator Martin McAleese and his assistant Nuala Murkathig and the team involved in putting together the McAleese report into the Magdalene Laundries. I think it's important to note that it was only in July of last year that this government actually initiated action to have a report like the McAleese report put together and produced. Clearly, Deputy McDonald hasn't had an opportunity to read this report yet. I believe that the 1,000 pages of this report deal with the facts as was the mandate given to Senator McAleese and his group, and deals with them in a way that many people might have a very different impression from what happened here. The numbers involved were not 30,000. There were 10,012. The actual number of known admissions from 1922 onwards was 14,607, which clearly meant that numbers of women re-entered Magdalene Laundries on a number of occasions. The admissions for which routes of entry are known are stipulated in the report at 8,025, and the numbers of those referrals that were made or were facilitated by the state was 2,124, or 26.5%. So the average age at the time of entry was 23, the median age at the time of entry was 20, the age of the youngest known entrant was 9 years of age, and the age of the oldest known entrant was 89. So 35.6 were there for less than 3 months, 47 less than 6 months, 61% for less than a year, 68% for less than 18 months. Now, I'd suggest, Deputy McDonald, that what we need to do is to absorb this report and reflect on its findings. It is 1,000 pages long. I'd suggest that we take the opportunity to have a Dáil debate on this in 2 weeks' time in the House here, when people can have had a time and an opportunity to read it, to reflect upon it, and to understand its findings. But I would like to say this. The overriding requirement, as identified by Senator McAleese and his team, was to deal with the stigma that was attached to those people who worked in Magdalene Laundries and who stayed in the accommodation which was attached to them. It's important to recognise that while this reflected an Ireland of the 20s, the 30s, the 40s and the 50s, which in many ways was a harsh and uncompromising and authoritarian Ireland. And that's reflected in the stories of the women who had the courage to come forward and say their piece here. It's also clear from the report that there is no evidence of sexual abuse in the Magdalene Laundries. There is one reported case of abuse by one resident on another. That the stigma, that the branding together of all the residents, all 10,000 in the Magdalene Laundries, needs to be removed and should have been removed long before this. And I really am sorry that that never happened, and I regret that it never happened. But I'm conscious of the clarity of this report from Senator McAleese and his team. And to those residents who went into the Magdalene Laundries through a variety of ways, 26% of them from state intervention or state involvement. I'm sorry for those people that they lived in that kind of environment. But as somebody said to me, you know, when we look at what happened to the women with symphysiotomy, or the thalidomide people, or the others who were in mental hospitals or lunatic asylums, as they were referred to in those days, or indeed in many other places, Deputy MacDonald. I admire their courage for speaking out to Senator McAleese, and I'd advise you to read the report carefully, because there is material there that has never been seen by the Irish public yet. He has had access to information, the accounts, the finances of the sisters and the religious orders and the laundries in putting this report together. It is a report that has been very well worthwhile producing. I'm grateful to Senator McAleese for so doing.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, as I say, Ciancola, that this release of pressure and understanding of so many of these women was not done before this, because they were branded as being the fallen women, as they often were referred to, in this state. And it was not until July 2011 that the initiative was taken by the government to actually deal with this in a comprehensive way. And I want to see that those women who are still with us, anywhere between 800 and 1,000 at max, I understand, that we should see that the state provides for them with the very best of facilities and supports that they need in their lives.
Thank you.
So it is comprehensive, Deputy MacDonald. It's a very detailed report. These statistics speak for themselves, and I really do believe, Ciancola, that far from jumping to conclusions here, everybody should read this report very carefully, reflect on it deeply. It refers, Deputy MacDonald, to an Ireland which was a very hostile and far-off environment in the past. These women who came forward with their testaments to Senator McAleese spoke with courage of their involvement and the routes which they took in the main to the Magdalene Laundries. And I think we should treat this with a measure of calmness and consideration that it deserves. Come back in 2 weeks and have a debate here in the Oireachtas about it.
Deputy MacDonald.
Thank you. Well, Taoiseach, you see, the last of these institutions only closed their doors in 1996. So sadly, this isn't something that is simply a throwback to 1940s or 1950s Ireland. And you speak of the courage of the women coming forward and telling their stories, telling the truth. And can I join with you in recognising their courage? And can I just say, I wish only that their courage could be matched by some courage on your part. I'm very alarmed by what you've had to say in the Dáil today. We all understand that the report will have to be studied and studied carefully. But let's not forget that a huge amount of information and testimony, historically verified, was already in the public domain prior to the McAleese Committee. In fact, the now Minister, Alan Shatter, back in 2009, spoke of the irrefutable evidence of state involvement in the running of these institutions. So the time for the apology, Taoiseach, is now. And we shouldn't try and put some kind of a positive gloss on what happened. These people weren't residents voluntarily offering their services and their labour. They were young, vulnerable women held in institutions, in their minds imprisoned and exploited. That's what happened. And the figures are stark, and you know yourself that 2 of the laundries have actually been excluded from the calculation, the number that you've put forward in the Dáil today. We do have to reflect on the report, and I welcome the fact that there will be a Dáil debate. But I am very disappointed. I'm disappointed for the women, for the survivors, that you cannot stand and say the state was culpable, the state was negligent, you told the truth, we believe your stories, and for that we collectively say sorry. So the debate will be in 2 weeks' time, when the apology, Taoiseach, and when then the issue of redress and compensation for these women.
Thank you. Taoiseach.
I think you should read the report, Deputy McDonald. I have no intention of going down your route of wanting to make some kind of political football about this. What I refer to here is the truth and the reality which has now been uncovered and laid out for everybody to read and to understand and to discuss and to debate, arising from the McAleese report. It might interest you that just over 10% of those who attended in Magdalene Laundries were sent there by families. 19% of those residents in the Magdalene Laundries went in there themselves, and as I pointed out to you, in the 14,000 admission figures, there are numbers in there who went back to the Magdalene Laundries on a number of occasions. As I pointed out to you, the youngest person admitted was 9 years of age. The oldest was 89 years of age. This is not a report for any kind of glib remarks. This is a report. I'm not suggesting that you made that. I'm not suggesting. I'm not suggesting that you made
the chair, please. Through the chair.
It's long overdue. And when you were on these
very
benches,
liberal once again here.
clear.
Don't abuse the
what Deputy Shatter said when he was on the far side of the House in opposition has been proven to be true. That there was state intervention in numbers of these residents of the Magdalene Laundries. And that's outlined in the details and the statistics uncovered by Senator McAleese. But it's not Deputy McDonald, a single issue story. Those residents, all 10,000, arrived in those Magdalene Laundries through a variety of circumstances and for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was destitution and poverty. And this is starkly outlined in the report. So, as I said, I really am sorry, Count Corla, that it's taken until July 2011 to trigger the initiative by government to have a report such as Senator McAleese has put together with his team. I'm grateful to him for doing that. I regret the fact very much that the stigma attached to those residents in those Magdalene Laundries was not removed over very many years when something could have been done about it.
Thank you.
So I look forward to your contribution, Deputy McDonald. I look forward to your contribution on the Dáil debate here in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Boyd Barrett.